Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory Warhammer 40k video. In today's episode we're going to be doing a quick tip tactica, but this time we shall be casting our eye over the Guard Artillery Park. You see, in the recent Munitorum Field Manual update where the points are changed for various units, the Guard took a bit of a body blow. One of our beloved artillery pieces, the Manticore, essentially went the way of the Dodo. Now you can still take it, it's still a legal unit, but its points were increased to 180, which is just far too expensive for what that thing is bringing to the table. It starts making it compete with main battle tanks like Lemurus Exterminators. It starts making it compete with things like Scion Gigablobs, which we've talked about recently, and we know how good they are. But the thing is, a lot of Guard players own the Manticore, a lot of Guard players were using the Manticore, and so a lot of Guard players have been affected by this, and it's left a little bit of a hole in their list. And the big question is, what can we use to plug that gap? Naturally, a lot of people are moving towards the Basilisk. It's a GW plastic kit, and it's readily available, and it's pretty cost effective. It's 135 points, making it 45 points cheaper than a Manticore, and it fulfills a lot of what you want from an artillery piece in the Guard. You have indirect fire, decent strength, decent AP, decent damage. But the Basilisk isn't really a damage dealer. It's not really in the same category as the Manticore. The Basilisk is more of a force multiplier and an opponent screwer overer, if that's a term, because its main thing is it slows your opponent down with its Earthshaker shells. I've often spoken about Basilisks in all my after-action reports, my battle reports, and the whole thing about the Basilisk is it doesn't need to do damage to be effective to you, and that's great, that's good, but sometimes what you're after is a damage dealer. And if you're someone who was using Manticores in your army and you were using them as a principal damage dealer, then replacing them with something that doesn't do damage might not really solve your issue. And you might be thinking to yourself, I don't need any artillery piece, I need a punchy artillery. I need something that can do exactly what my Manticore was doing without increasing the points of everything ridiculously, and without me having to start rewriting my whole list to put more damage into it in other areas. If this sounds like you, or you're someone that's just interested in the many different flavors of big boomstick that the Guard can bring to the table, then let me introduce you to the Medusa. The Medusa is a big gun that brings a lot of similar things to the table to that of the Manticore. It's strength 10, it's flat damage 3, which means that it can threaten pretty much anything in the game. With it being indirect fire, it can stay still, so it's got lethal hits. So even if you come across a vehicle that's toughness 10 or toughness 11 and you start having to wound it on 5, it's fine, you've got the lethals in there. The flat damage 3 means that it can threaten the aforementioned vehicles. You know, you get 3 or 4 of these shots through, you're probably going to blow up your average light to medium tank. Any heavy or super heavy infantry that are rocking around with 3 wounds, you're going to insta-splat them as well. But most importantly, it has not been subjected to any more points increases, and it comes in at a fairly bargain 110 points. This makes it, at least on paper, and we'll delve into that a little bit more in a moment, 70 points cheaper than a Manticore. Even if you look at the pre-balanced data slate points update, it still makes it 40 points cheaper than the Manticore. So if this thing is so good, why haven't we seen people running it already? Well, we actually did see a lot of people running it at the beginning of 10th when it was 80 points, which was frankly a steal. But it's not been featured as heavily for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it is a traditionally resin Forge World kit. Obviously, there are some real-life logistics to take into account, but with 3D printing and just third-party alternatives, that's not such a big deal in 2024. The other issue is that it only fires D6 shots. The Manticore fired D6 plus 1, which at least in theory, gave it a bit of reliability, but with only firing D6 shots, the Medusa can be a little swingy. However, as someone who speaks from battlefield experience, I can tell you that D6 plus 1 meant very little. That plus 1 basically didn't mean anything. The number of times when I would roll a 1 with the Manticore and it meant it did nothing was just all the time. So the plus 1 doesn't really do anything. The only time when D6 plus something really matters is when you like D6 plus 3. Then if you roll a 1, you still get shots, and you can still get something out of shots. But yeah, the Medusa having only D6 shots looks bad on paper. I tell you now, the reality of it is it's not as big as it may seem. The other thing that's different about it is that it's only got a 36-inch range. Now that's more than enough. It's fine. However, you might encounter some difficulties if you're playing on cable cord deployment and find that your opponent deploys a unit at the very back of the deployment zone, just touching onto their home objective, screening out the backfield. In those situations, the Medusa might not be able to have the range to help, but 36 inches is more than enough for you to deploy it comfortably in the back of your own deployment zone behind a nice L-shaped ruin, and to be able to bombard past the middle of the board and the no man's land objective. And the last problem with the Medusa is its base ballistic skill is only 5+. This means that even though it has heavy, if it fires indirect, you're going to be hitting on a 5, because the heavy gives you +1, but the indirect gives you -1, so it balances out to a 5+. Now that doesn't mean you're stuck on hitting on a 5+. It just means you're going to have to spend points to get it up to 4+. And so when you look at the points cost in the Medusa, don't see 110 points. See 110 plus the hidden cost of adding a officer to boss them around. Now I want to get into this officer thing a little bit more in a moment, but before I forget, I do want to mention one more difference with the Medusa, but this time it's a positive difference, which is that it's flat AP -3 rather than AP -2. It actually has an advantage over the Manticore. So if you stack these two weapons up against each other, the Manticore has the higher range, and it's got D6 plus 1 shots, and it hits on 4 natively. It's strength 10, AP -2, flat 3 damage. And the Medusa has only got a 36 range, but in 90% of battlefield situations that'll be enough. It's only got D6 shots, but there really is very little difference. You know, in reality, there's very little difference between D6 plus 1 and D6. It only hits on a 5+. It's got the same strength, it's got the same damage, but it's got better AP. Which kind of balances out, I suppose, the 1 less shot, but the 1 extra AP. Those two, I suppose, do balance each other out quite nicely. But coming back round to the officers and the ballistic skill, I think we need to have officers there to improve this thing's ballistic skill. I just don't like the idea of hitting it on 5s. Sure, it can fish for 6s on the lethals and everything, and sure, you could just take like 3 of them, but I feel like it's often better to have 2 units that are hitting well than 3 units that are hitting badly. To achieve this in a very basic and easy to do way, I think you could just take 2 Medusas and then slap an officer in there that can do 2 orders. For example, you've got things like Creed, you've got Strachan, and you've got a Castellan that can do 2 orders with Grand Strategist. And you don't even necessarily need to attach your officer to another unit. Sure, you could do for some ablative wounds, but unless your opponent's rocking a lot of indirect fire, you could happily just have a lone officer there, safe, behind line of sight blocking terrain, just ordering the 2 units. This would come in at 220 points for the Medusas, and then about 55 points, let's say if you take Creed, 55 points for Creed. So for 275 points, you would be able to replace your 2 Manticores. You'd actually be saving 25 points over the pre-balance update points value of the Manticores, and you'd be saving way more than this if, post-balance update if you go for this little combo. And it allows you to seamlessly take, if you were running a pair of Manticores to supplement your firepower and some indirect fire stuff, it would allow you to basically take those 2 Manticores, take them out of the list, and plug in instead 2 Medusas with a 2 order officer, and you're basically back in business. In fact, you're saving 25 points. You won't need to adjust your lists in any negative way whatsoever. Those 25 points might allow you to get a better tank, they might allow you to get another enhancement, they might allow you to upgrade a unit. There's all sorts of things that those 25 points will do for you. But fundamentally, if you were someone that was running a brace of Manticores, then swapping those out for a brace of Medusas is very easy and doesn't require you to radically alter your list in any way, shape or form. Attention guardsmen, this is an announcement by the Departamento Militarum. Element Games is an official sponsor of the Mordian Glory channel. They offer up to 20% off Warhammer 40k and 10% off Bolt Action and other game systems. Use the link down in the description to save money and support the channel. Anyone not using the link will be referred to the local commissariat. Also, don't forget that if you use referral code TIM3921, then you will receive double store credit, saving even more money on your future purchases. That's all for now. Fallout! However, if you don't have one order hanging around, don't worry, there are ways around it. You can take a Medusa, and then that'll cost you 110 points, and then you'll have to take a Cadian Castellan, who can do one order. The Cadian Castellan, however, does cost 45 points. So this is slightly less plug and play, because one Manticore pre-update 150 points, this combination is 155. Now, it might only seem like 5 points. A lot of people do have 95 points in the army. Those last 5 points they don't know what to spend it on, or 10 points, they end up just putting the death mask enhancement in because. But if you don't have those 5 points spared, that is something you're going to need to be aware of. I did look at other officers that might be able to help. I looked at Sergeant Harker, for example, because I know he can do an order. But unfortunately, Harker can only do an order specifically Katachan jungle fighters. He can't do it to any regiment. So, as far as I can tell, if you want to swap out one Manticore for one Medusa, like for like, and get the same effect, you are going to end up spending 5 points more on that Cadian. Sit there and babysit. But perhaps you weren't taking one or two Manticores. Perhaps you were spamming them, unleashing holy and righteous indirect fire death upon your opponent. Well, if you were doing that, it's pretty straightforward. You basically combine the last two things that we talked about. It will actually come in cheaper to take 3 Medusas, a Castellan and Creed than it would have done for you to take your 3 Manticores pre-update. Of course, it's way cheaper than it is now post-update, but it actually comes in at about 20 points cheaper, because Creed and a Castellan are 100 points, and then your 3 Medusas are 110 points each, coming in at 330 points. So in total, it's going to cost you 430 points, which is 20 points cheaper than if you were taking 3 Manticores pre-update, and like I said, just a buttload of points cheaper post-update. The only tiny fly in the ointment, the last thing you'd need to take into account would be the fact that the Medusa is on quite a large base. It's got quite a large footprint. So whereas you might have been able to cram 3 Manticores behind one L-shaped ruin, you are likely to have to take advantage of 2 L-shaped ruins. You're running 3 Medusas because of the large oval base that they could. Just a tabletop logistical matter you'll need to factor in to your planning and strategy. But regardless of how many Manticores you are thinking of putting in your list, 1, 2 or 3, I hope that you can see from this video that all is not lost. You don't need to fundamentally rewrite your list. It is relatively simple to take the Manticore and just swap it out with the Medusa carriage battery. To be clear, it's not going to be exactly the same. There's going to be a few little differences and quirks. You're going to have to take into account the range and the slightly more random amount of shots. And then you've got the officers, which if you're not paying for units, might be a little bit susceptible to enemy indirect fire. But by and large, if you're pining for the Manticore and you're looking for something that can do the same job, the Medusa is the artillery piece that you can get on the rebound. At least that's what I think. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Are you convinced that the Medusa can take over from the Manticore? Or is the dream dead and we're now all team Basilisk. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, and they have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a big shout out to Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your incredible generosity is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time, and it is a big driving force behind the channel. But I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.